headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. Supporters of the former Peruvian president Alan Garcia have been expressing shock at his suicide. People gathered outside a Lima hospital where Garcia was taken for emergency surgery after he shot himself in the head. The incident occurred as police arrived to arrest him in connection with the Odebrecht corruption scandal. The 69-year-old former president had repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. The Interior Minister explained what happened.
Garcia said he was going to make a phone call to his lawyer. He entered his room and closed the door after him. A few minutes later, police heard a gunshot, and they forced themselves into the room and found Mr. Garcia sitting down with a wound to his head.
Garcia's death was confirmed by the forensics department. The Attorney General had ordered his preliminary arrest to investigate the case. Garcia served as president between 1985 and 1990, and again between 2006 and 2011 with the APRA party. Our correspondent Jaime Herrera has the latest from Lima.
After learning about the death of former President Alan Garcia, now there is a debate how the body of the former president will be transferred to the morgue. The police want to transfer the body as soon as possible so they can start investigating the death. However, the members of Garcia's party are asking authorities to transfer the body with a parade and start his funeral before the investigation and administrative process begins. The APRA party has announced that the wake will take place in the party's headquarters known as Casa del Pueblo or People's House. It is important to mention that in this investigation were also involved his personal secretary, the son of his secretary, and the former Minister of Transport, René Cornejo. Cornejo surrendered to the police in the morning. President Martín Vizcarra said he was concerned about the death and sent his condolences to Garcia's family and the party's members.
We thank Jaime Herrera for that report. Prosecutors allege that Odebrecht paid millions of dollars in bribes to the private secretary of Alan Garcia. Let's take a closer look at the corruption case against the former Peruvian president.
Luis Nava Guibert and his son Jose Nava Mendiola received more than $4 million from Odebrecht, according to the news website IDL Reporters. The alleged bribes were through a shell account at a private bank in Andorra. Both men are now fugitives from justice.
Mr. Nava is indeed abroad, and his father is in hospital. All this is well known, and so the public prosecutor, in this case, José Domingo Pérez, has to make an independent assessment of all this information.
In the Odebrecht files seen by Peruvian journalists, it says that these apparent bribes were linked to mega construction projects like the Inter-Ocean Highway and the Olmos irrigation works. According to the Congressman Humberto Morales, both projects involved a series of irregularities.
There were 6-hour meetings between José and Nava and Odebrecht staff, and then the government issued emergency decrees, which in fact there is nothing urgent about them, but which made significant changes to the budgets of these projects.
Luis Nava Guibert was for years a close friend of Alan Garcia's. He was his personal secretary throughout his second term, and this also became a part of the investigations. Aside from Nava, arrest warrants were issued for 4 senior officials in Garcia's government in connection with the car wash corruption scandal. They include directors of Petro Peru, the Ministry of Transport, and the Lima Metro.
And another former Peruvian president has been rushed into hospital. Pedro Pablo Kuczynski was suffering from high blood pressure. Kuczynski is currently serving 10 days of pre-trial detention, while he too is being investigated in connection with the Odebrecht corruption scandal. He has now been given house arrest. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has announced it is tightening its blockade on Cuba through the controversial Helms-Burton law and will begin other measures against the island. The government announced the enforcing of Title III of the Helms-Burton law, which allows U.S. companies and individuals to claim properties expropriated by the Cuban government at the beginning of the revolution. Title III also allows legal claims against foreign companies which engage in business that involves such property.
I'm announcing that the Trump administration will no longer suspend Title III. Effective May 2nd, the right to bring an action under Title III of the Libertad Act will be implemented in full. I have already informed Congress of my decision.
Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez replied to the U.S. measures on Twitter. He said this announcement from Pompeo is an attack on international law and the sovereignty of Cuba and other states. He said this aggressive escalation of actions by the U.S. against Cuba will fail, as in the Battle of Girón, we will win. He was referring to the U.S. invasion in 1961, which was stopped by the forces of Fidel Castro. And Cuban citizens have also reacted angrily to the tighter U.S. sanctions.
Una barbaridad, una atrocidad.
It's an outrage, an atrocity. There's no basis. Only a madman can think of this. This will bring about a series of international problems, given that more than 60 years ago, here there was an attempt to compensate those who had lost property, and it was not accepted. So now, after 60 years, they want to take this up again. I think that in some cases, Cuba will be able to negotiate, but not in all cases.
I believe that there will be an additional effect than just on future investment. The United States thinks that those octogenarians who were defeated at the Bay of Pigs will win something, but they probably won't get anything. What I would say to Cubans is, who's going to take this away from us? We are here. The properties are here. They're not on the moon or in the United States.
April 17th is the International Day of Campesino Struggle. Social movements around the world are marking the occasion with protests and other activities. This demonstration is in Sao Paulo and is one of several called across Brazil by the landless workers movement. The International Campesino Day began in Brazil, where it coincides with the National Day of Struggle for Land Reform. It was set on this day to remember the massacre of 19 campesinos at Carayas in 1996.
April 17 marks the 23rd anniversary of the peasant massacre in El Dorado do Carayas. This is a very important day for all of our workers. We took the force of the peasants who were assassinated. They died, but their sacrifice served as seed to foment our struggle.
Our correspondent in Brazil, Brian Muir, has been at the demonstration in Sao Paulo and sent us this report.
I'm standing in Agua Branca Park in the city of Sao Paulo, where hundreds of members of the Landless Rural Workers Movement, commonly known as the MST, have gathered after they occupied a government building this morning to remember the International Day of Peasant Struggle. Now, all over Brazil, the MST is coordinating similar events to this one. In the state of Sao Paulo alone, there were 22 different demonstrations today. And so the MST is demanding not just that their fallen comrades are remembered on this day, but they're demanding an end to the violence that's increasing against peasants in the Brazilian countryside since the election of far-right President Jair Bolsonaro.
We thank Brian Muir for that report. We spoke to Garcia, a leader of the landless workers movement, about the campesino struggle in Latin America and how the government of Jair Bolsonaro is attacking these social movements in Brazil.
We see this historical period in Latin America, period of an advent of right-wing forces in many of our countries. So we are living now a period of a very much stronger repression of every kind of social struggle, and normally indigenous people, traditional people, peasants, women, youth are the ones who are more affected by the repression and the violence of the state. So today in Latin America we see issues like the right-wing government of Brazil, the imperialist attacks in Venezuela, the right-wing government in Ecuador, in Argentina. All of those governments together have been implementing neoliberal policies that have been affecting a lot the life of the peasants. Bolsonaro's government was elected based in the allegation of ending the social struggle in Brazil, basically all the social struggle. Of course, he nominates MSTs as one of his main enemies for being one of the most organized movements in Brazil, but he's actually against any kind of social struggle. Regarding the peasants itself, there are several measures of this government that has been affecting directly the peasants. One is that there is no agrarian reform in this government. It's not only a matter of not prioritizing it, as it happened in the previous government, but it's just a matter of they don't believe in agrarian reform. They don't agree with that. So we understand that we are going to have a period of total stagnation and maybe even some steps back on the agrarian reform in Brazil.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Argentina is introducing price controls and other measures to try to control the galloping inflation and the drop of the peso. The president of the central bank made the announcement after figures released on Tuesday showed that inflation in March was much higher than expected. The price of 60 essential products, including food, will be frozen for at least 6 months. Argentina has one of the highest inflation rates in the world, and President Mauricio Macri's popularity is falling sharply ahead of elections in October. Our correspondent Edgardo Esteban from Buenos Aires explains the details.
Despite predictions that it will ease in April, inflation rates in Argentina continue to rise. An inflation rate of 4.7% was reported in March, and an annual rate of 11.8% for the first quarter of the year. Because of this, the government made an important announcement aimed at easing the economic situation in the country. The price of 60 products will remain frozen until the end of the year. This is an alternative solution to avoid families from paying more and more for the same food products, as prices can increase on a daily basis. However, the cost of electricity, gas, and water continues to increase, but the government is trying to find a way to also halt the increase of gas prices. They are also trying to freeze public transportation fees, credit benefits, and the price of medication for retired people. The government is also trying to design a specific credit and loan scheme for small businesses. But Macri's economic policies had before resulted in more than 150,000 layoffs, and over 30,000 businesses had to close down.
We thank Edgardo for that report. Members of parliament in Chile are debating the approval of the TPP free trade agreement. Our correspondent, Tiare Valenzuela, has the details.
Chile is discussing the TPP treaty, a free trade agreement that now has to be approved by the parliament so it can come into effect. Over the years, Chile has signed 25 free trade agreements with over 60 countries. Now, social movements are worried since they say that this new deal is a secret for citizens. There are over 30 chapters in the deal and 300 pages that only a few have read. What we know is that the transnational companies will not be regulated by Chile's laws, among other things. In fact, if these corporations consider their businesses are being affected while operating in the country, they could sue the government for violation of the agreement. Social movements mobilized on Tuesday in Valparaiso, and they are also marching this Wednesday in capital Santiago. The political party Christian Democracy is fully supporting the agreement. They also support other projects like the tax reform presented by President Sebastián Piñera.
Thousands marched towards the presidential palace in Ecuador on Tuesday evening to express their opposition to government policies. But the police met the protesters with tear gas, pepper spray, and batons. Our correspondent was there.
In the afternoon, thousands gathered in this park in Quito to begin their protest over a raft of government policies. They chanted to demand the resignation of President Lenin Moreno and called him a traitor.
I've lived in the United States for 54 years, and I used to love coming back home because under President Correa, things were going well. But with this gentleman, a lot of people are out of work.
The protesters also condemned the expulsion of Julian Assange from Ecuador's embassy in London and the removal of his Ecuadorian citizenship, as well as the agreement with the IMF, which they say is already having an impact on the economy.
They are going to put up the price of cooking gas and diesel. They already put up gasoline. They are laying off civil servants and increasing VAT. All this is because of the IMF. So we need to wake up and organize permanent protests based on the grassroots.
Por eso hay que despertarnos y nosotros vamos a seguir con una movilización.
The march moved through the historic center. Close to the presidential palace, they tried to get past the police barriers, and the police responded. Some accused them of excessive use of force, leaving a number of people injured and arrested.
They come here and hit us. They don't care if they're senior citizens, women and children, people with disabilities. They come and beat us as if we were criminals. We won't give in.
Don't feel frustrated, comrades. This is what the struggle and resistance are like. The people are here with us.
In the end, the police violence dispersed the march, but skirmishes continued throughout the night in different parts of the historic center. Local shops and restaurants, as well as passerbys, were all affected by the tear gas.
Antigua and Barbuta's Prime Minister Gaston Brown has said China offers better loans to the Caribbean than the World Bank. The Prime Minister criticized the United States' position on China's assistance program. He was speaking at the handover ceremony for a community center funded by China. This is the second time in 7 months that Brown has chastised U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who labeled China a predator.
Cuba's most prominent export these days is not cigars or rum.
The debate on St. Lucia's budget is underway, following Prime Minister Alan Chastain's presentation of a $588 million fiscal package. Chastain has announced a number of budgetary measures, including an increase in fuel taxes and a reduction in value-added tax. Also, under a new income tax system, personal allowance would increase. It is projected that St. Lucia's economy will grow by 3% this financial year. There has also been a slight decline in public debt.
Statutory instrument number 55.
A Chilean man has been questioned by a French prosecutor as part of an ongoing investigation into the death of his former girlfriend. Nicolas Cepeda is the main suspect of the killing of a woman who was a Japanese student. The French authorities asked Chile's prosecutor to cooperate in the investigation. Cepeda lived in France but returned to Chile after his former girlfriend disappeared in December 2016. This Wednesday is the anniversary of the US-backed invasion of Cuba in 1961, known as the Bay of Pigs. A day before the failed attack, the Cuban leaders declared the socialist nature of the revolution.
Fidel Castro declared the socialist nature of the Cuban Revolution at the funeral ceremony for the victims that died in the bombings in different parts of the country. This criminal action occurred when 8 mercenary planes flew over the islands with fake identification. They intended to destroy Cuba's air force to reduce their already small capacity, addressing an outraged crowd willing to defend their right to rule over their own destiny. Fidel stated.
What the imperialists cannot forgive is that we are here and that we created a socialist revolution right in front of their noses, and that we defend this socialist revolution with these rifles.
The attack was a prelude to the invasion of Playa Girón on April 17, 1961, which backfired as the United States suffered their first defeat in Latin America, thanks to the joint action of the army and the people through the National Revolutionary Militias. According to Fidel, the proclamation of the socialist nature of the Cuban Revolution started with the U.S. aggression. It was defined by the need to raise the revolutionary flag higher than ever.
Y que hayamos hecho una revolución socialista en las propias narices de los Estados Unidos.
We'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back. Indonesia President Joko Widodo is leading the presidential race. A quick count suggests Widodo has a 10% lead on his closest rival, former General Prabowo Subianto. Official results are not expected until May. More than 192 million people were eligible to cast their ballot to select 20,000 local and national lawmakers.
We can conclude from CSIS that Jokowi and Maruf Amin, according to the result of quick count, are leading ahead of their contenders Prabowo Subianto and his running mate Sandiaga Uno. The date is fixed, and random samples have almost reached 100%. They are leading by 55.8% versus 44.2%.
We have seen the results of quick count and the exit poll, but we need to be patient and wait for the official results from the Election Commission.
The Algerian top trade union office was stormed by protesters, calling on its chief resignation. Protesters claim that Sidi Said has ties to the ousted president Abdelaziz Bouteflika. The protesters have vowed to continue demonstrating until everyone linked to Bouteflika's government is out of power.
Today we are here outside the offices of the union to overthrow the Secretary General of the General Union of Algerian Workers, Sidi Said, because this man is someone who was left from the old regime. This person does not represent anyone, while we as workers represent almost 34% of the society. We are not satisfied with it. We want him gone.
Miners of South Africa's largest gold mining company, Sibanye Gold, have ended their 5-month strike after their union reached a deal with the management. The workers went on strike in November last year, demanding a $300 salary increase. The strike has been marred by violence with at least 9 people killed. At least 28 people have died and several others were injured after a tourist bus overturned in a coastal town on the Portuguese island of Madeira. According to initial results, most of the victims are German, but all the nationalities of the victims are yet to be known. About 37 of the 57 on board have been removed from the bus, and emergency service response is at the scene. Over 300 climate activists have been arrested in different locations in London during the ongoing protests led by the Extinction Rebellion group. The demonstrators blocked several main roads and disrupted public transport in the city. The British climate group has been protesting since Monday to force the government to take substantial measures on climate change. They want the government to declare a climate and ecological emergency and reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2025. And scientists in the US have restored cellular function in 32 pig brains after being dead for hours. By pumping a nourishing solution through the animal's brain, researchers managed to restore functions like glucose and oxygen intake for up to 6 hours at a time. The brains remained clinically dead, meaning they didn't show electrical neural activity associated with consciousness. Scientists hope their research can one day help treating victims of heart attacks and strokes and deepening our understanding of brain trauma. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.